Beloved, listen carefully. Money is not just paper or digits in an account. Money is a spirit. It carries an influence, it has a voice, and it has the power to amplify whatever it finds in your heart. This is why the question of who should truly have money is one of destiny, not just economics. When money enters the hands of a wicked man, it becomes a weapon of destruction. When it enters the hands of a careless man, it becomes an avenue for waste and pride. But when money is entrusted to the right people, men and women who fear God, who love righteousness, who seek the advancement of good causes, it becomes a tool for building lives, changing nations, and rewriting histories. The right people to have money are not merely those who can make it, they are those who understand stewardship. They know that wealth is a trust, not ownership. They understand that prosperity has a purpose beyond self-indulgence. Such people ask, Lord, why have you entrusted me with resources? What kingdom agenda do you want advanced through me? The right people to have money are those whose hearts have been purged of greed and selfish ambition. They are men and women who will not bow to mammon, but who will use wealth as an altar to honor God, to sponsor truth, to uplift the poor, to educate children, to heal the sick, and to defend justice. Hear me, money in the hands of the wrong person is dangerous, but money in the hands of the right person is deliverance. The destiny of many is tied to the obedience of a few who are entrusted with resources. There are dreams waiting for financiers, there are visions waiting for sponsors, there are destinies waiting for empowerment. This is why the prayer is not just for money to come, but that it comes into the hands of the right people, men and women who have been trained, tested, and trusted by God. So, let us not only desire to be wealthy, let us desire to be the kind of people God can trust with wealth. For the true measure of wealth is not in how much we keep, but in how much we release to serve divine purposes and humanity. Money is never truly owned by any man. It is a trust that God places in the hands of people he believes can manage it. To understand money as a trust means to recognize that no matter how hard one works or how skilled one may be, the capacity to attract and sustain resources comes as a gift from above. When people see money as ownership, they quickly fall into pride and begin to live with the illusion that their power, intelligence, or connections are the sole reasons for their prosperity. But when you understand it as a trust, humility becomes your posture and accountability becomes your culture. You realize that wealth is not merely about personal comfort, but about being an instrument in the hands of God to meet needs, solve problems, and bring glory to His name. Stewardship with money demands discipline. It is not enough to desire riches, you must have the maturity to handle them. When someone is given resources without the understanding of stewardship, those resources quickly reveal the state of their heart. Money has the ability to magnify what is already within you. If greed is inside, money will amplify it. If compassion is inside, money will make it more visible. That is why those who see money as a trust are careful to guard their hearts first, knowing that the true test of character is revealed when resources increase. It is easy to make promises of generosity when there is nothing in your hand, but the moment abundance comes, your heart will reveal its true priorities. To be a faithful steward of money, one must understand purpose. Wealth is not given randomly, it is tied to assignments. There are lives waiting to be changed through the resources that pass through your hands. There are visions waiting to be sponsored, families waiting to be lifted, communities waiting to be transformed. When money is seen as ownership, self becomes the center, and the focus shifts to luxury, competition, and status. But when it is seen as a trust, self becomes smaller, and impact becomes larger. The right person asks, why has God entrusted me with this? What need am I assigned to meet? What purpose am I meant to sponsor? Stewardship also calls for accountability. The parable of the talents shows us that every steward must give an account of how resources were used. It is a dangerous thing to mismanage what was given to you on trust. Many people pray for more money, but forget that God is watching how they manage the little in their care. Faithfulness with a little is the seed for increase. If money is squandered carelessly when it is small, greater resources will not be entrusted. Stewardship teaches that every coin is counted, every expenditure matters, and every opportunity to give must be weighed against the assignment of heaven. Another dimension of seeing money as a trust is partnership with God. A steward recognizes that resources are not for hoarding but for circulation. Just as the human body suffers when blood stops flowing, society suffers when wealth is locked in selfish hands. A faithful steward keeps money moving in the right direction, towards causes that heal, build, and transform. This partnership means aligning with the heart of God, becoming his extension on earth. When God wants to reach a needy family, he can trust a steward to be his hand. When he wants to sponsor the preaching of truth, he can trust a steward to be his financier. When he wants to lift a generation, he can trust a steward to channel resources to the right places. Understanding that money is a trust also reshapes your priorities. You stop chasing wealth just for the sake of wealth and begin to chase wisdom, character, and alignment with God's will. You no longer pray, "Lord, just make me rich," but you pray, "Lord, make me a vessel you can trust with riches." This shift of heart prepares you for true abundance, because heaven releases resources where there is assurance that they will not be wasted. Prosperity without purpose is vanity, but prosperity with stewardship is power. A steward does not measure success by how much he keeps, but by how much he releases for the right causes. This is why some people can live simply yet impact greatly. Their wealth may not always show in flamboyance, but it shows in the testimonies of those whose lives have been touched by their obedience. True stewardship is not loud, it is effective. It is not measured by applause, but by impact. And when resources are multiplied in the hands of such people, entire nations can feel the ripple effect. To view money as a trust is also to recognize its temporality. You came into this world with nothing, and you will leave with nothing. Whatever passes through your hands is only for a season. That consciousness keeps you humble and generous. It reminds you that the wealth in your hands is not the destination, but a vehicle to a higher calling. A steward knows that one day the resources will either leave him or he will leave the resources. What will remain is the legacy of how it was used. In the end, the right people to have money are those who live by the principle of stewardship. They know it is not theirs but God's, not for waste but for impact, not for pride but for service, not for ownership but for trust. They are disciplined, accountable, and aligned, and when such people rise in wealth, society flourishes because money has found its way into the hands of the right stewards who see it as a divine trust placed upon them for a greater purpose. Wealth in the wrong hands has always proven to be a dangerous weapon because money carries influence that multiplies whatever lies within the heart of a man. When someone with wickedness in their soul gains access to great resources, those resources become an instrument of oppression, corruption, and destruction. It is why entire nations can be crippled by a few wealthy individuals whose motives are driven by selfishness and greed. The presence of wealth in such hands means that evil has the ability to spread faster, scale higher, and last longer. A wicked man with no resources is limited in his capacity to harm, but when that same man is empowered financially, his reach expands, and his ability to enforce wickedness multiplies. The wrong hands do not see money as a tool for building others, but as a weapon for building themselves at the expense of many. Yet in the right hands, wealth takes on an entirely different expression. When money comes into the possession of a heart purified by love, governed by wisdom, and aligned with the purpose of God, that wealth becomes an instrument of deliverance. Suddenly, it becomes possible to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, build schools, establish hospitals, sponsor education, finance visions, and empower generations. In the right hands, resources become seeds of hope that can transform entire communities. What is wasted in the wrong hands becomes multiplied in the right hands. What brings destruction in the wrong hands brings preservation in the right ones. This contrast is why the question of who holds wealth is far more important than the question of how much wealth exists in the world. Wealth in the right hands is deliverance to families who have been trapped in poverty for generations. When a man with a pure heart rises in resources, he becomes a bridge for others. Suddenly, young men and women who would have been trapped by lack are empowered to dream again. Orphans who had no hope of education are given scholarships. Families that would have been homeless are given shelter. The right person sees wealth not only as an opportunity for personal comfort, but as a responsibility to rewrite stories. Wealth in the wrong hands closes doors, wealth in the right hands opens them. The effect of money in the wrong hands is often pride and arrogance, because the heart that has not been trained cannot separate identity from possession. Such people begin to believe that their value as human beings is tied to the abundance of their resources. They exalt themselves above others, oppress those with less, and use wealth as a measuring stick for superiority. But when resources find their way into the right hands, the response is humility, because such people recognize that money is not an identity, but a trust. They are grateful for the privilege and careful not to misuse it. Their humility becomes attractive, and their generosity becomes a testimony that wealth can coexist with character. Wealth in the wrong hands is wasted potential. There are men and women who accumulate wealth only to store it in vaults, hoard it in accounts, or squander it on vanity, while countless lives around them suffer. The wrong hands think of how to consume. The right hands think of how to contribute. The wrong hands dream only of what can be acquired. The right hands dream of what can be built. In the wrong hands, wealth becomes stagnant. In the right hands, it flows like a river, watering dry lands, refreshing weary souls, and producing fruits for generations. Another tragedy of wealth in the wrong hands is manipulation. Money is a voice, and whoever controls it has the power to control narratives. In the hands of the wrong person, wealth funds lies, propaganda, immorality, and ideologies that corrupt society. It sponsors ungodly agendas, empowers corrupt systems, and silences truth. But when that same voice is placed in the right hands, it begins to sponsor truth, defend righteousness, and give a platform for light to shine. Wealth in the right hands amplifies good, just as wealth in the wrong hands amplifies evil. The difference is never in the money itself, but in the nature of the heart that holds it. Wealth in the right hands carries with it the fragrance of compassion. Compassion moves people to see beyond themselves, to notice the pain of others, and to commit resources to healing wounds. A compassionate heart with wealth becomes a river of kindness. Such people understand that prosperity without impact is empty, and they willingly invest in people, projects, and purposes that bring transformation. Wealth in the wrong hands breeds selfishness, but wealth in the right hands breeds selflessness. It is important to recognize that wealth always multiplies influence. If a man is influential without money, his influence remains limited. When money enters, that influence grows exponentially. This is why it matters who has it. Influence can either heal or destroy, uplift or suppress, preserve or corrupt. Wealth in the right hands extends the influence of wisdom, justice, and love, while wealth in the wrong hands extends the influence of foolishness, injustice, and hatred. The true battle over wealth is not just economic, it is spiritual and moral, a battle over whose influence will dominate. The right hands do not simply spend money, they invest it. They invest it in people, in structures, in institutions that outlive them. They think generationally, understanding that the greatest testimony of wealth is not what you enjoyed in your lifetime, but what remains long after you are gone. Wrong hands think only of immediate gratification, while right hands think of legacy. The wrong person builds monuments to self. The right person builds ladders for others to climb. The wrong person hoards wealth until it rots. The right person sows wealth until it multiplies. Wealth in the wrong hands enslaves. Wealth in the right hands liberates. There are millions bound by poverty, but sometimes the chains remain because the resources that could set them free are locked in the wrong hands. When wealth enters the hands of someone with vision, understanding, and compassion, those chains are broken. Liberation comes not only in the form of money handed out, but in opportunities created, platforms established, and systems built that empower people to rise by themselves. Liberation is the mark of wealth rightly handled, because true prosperity is never about one man rising alone, but about lifting others along the way. Wealth in the wrong hands blinds, but wealth in the right hands illuminates. The wrong person is blinded by abundance, unable to see their own frailty or the needs of others, intoxicated by the illusion of permanence. The right person, however, is illuminated by responsibility, aware that life is fleeting and resources are temporal, and thus chooses to shine light in the areas of ignorance, poverty, and hopelessness. They use their resources to bring clarity where there was confusion, direction where there was despair, and strength where there was weakness. The greatest tragedy is not a lack of money in the world, but the misplacement of money into the wrong hands. The world suffers not because there is no wealth, but because it has not always reached the right people. When wealth shifts into the right hands, the cry of many is silenced, hope is restored, and the purposes of God are advanced. The destiny of nations, the future of generations, and the survival of visions often depend on whose hands hold the wealth. The right people to have money are those whose hearts have been purged of greed and aligned with a higher purpose, because money in itself is not evil. It is neutral, a tool that takes the shape of the character of the one who possesses it. If the heart is corrupt, money amplifies corruption. If the heart is pure, money amplifies purity and becomes a force for good. Greed is one of the greatest dangers of wealth because it blinds people to the needs of others. It creates an insatiable hunger that can never be satisfied, and it turns resources into idols rather than instruments. The man whose heart is ruled by greed will never be content no matter how much he acquires, for greed is a pit with no bottom, and pouring resources into it only deepens the emptiness. But the one whose heart has been purified sees money not as a god to be worshipped, but as a servant to be directed toward noble causes. Alignment with purpose is what separates the right people from everyone else. When someone understands that life is not random and that every resource has a reason, money takes on meaning beyond luxury. A heart aligned with purpose sees resources as connected to destiny. Such a person knows that wealth is not given merely to decorate life, but to advance causes that outlive the individual. When money finds its way into the hands of someone with this alignment, it begins to build schools, raise leaders, strengthen families, heal communities, and support the spread of light in dark places. Their use of money reveals a deep sense of responsibility, because they know that every coin carries within it the potential to alter someone's story. The right people are not controlled by comparison or competition. Greed often expresses itself in the desire to outshine others, to prove worth by material display, but the heart that has been purged of greed does not measure success by what others have. It measures success by obedience to assignment. For such people, money is not about racing against others, but about fulfilling their unique role in life. They will not waste resources trying to impress, because they understand that true wealth is not about display, but about impact. While the greedy man seeks validation through possessions, the aligned man seeks validation through legacy. Generosity flows naturally from the heart that is free from greed. When someone is not enslaved to the endless craving for more, they are free to release what they have to bless others. Greed closes the hand, alignment opens it. The right person to have money knows that giving is not loss but sowing, that every act of generosity multiplies both in heaven and on earth. They give not grudgingly but cheerfully, seeing themselves as channels through which resources flow. And the more they release, the more they are entrusted with, because heaven trusts those who will not hoard what is meant to circulate. The right people to have money are those who have mastered contentment. Contentment is not the absence of ambition. It is the presence of gratitude. It is the ability to enjoy what you have while still reaching for more in alignment with purpose. Contentment protects the heart from covetousness and greed, ensuring that resources do not become chains. A content man may still pursue increase, but he is not enslaved by it. His joy is not defined by the size of his bank account, but by the fulfillment of his assignment. Because he is not driven by greed, he can be trusted with more, knowing that abundance will not corrupt him. Discipline is another hallmark of those whose hearts are aligned with purpose. They know that money without control leads to ruin, so they are careful stewards. They budget, they plan, they save, and they invest with wisdom, not allowing impulse or vanity to direct their decisions. Greed makes people reckless with wealth, but discipline makes people responsible. The right people handle money with foresight, always considering how today's choices will affect tomorrow's outcomes. Their alignment with purpose ensures that discipline is not a burden but a lifestyle, because they see money as a tool for long-term impact rather than short-term pleasure. The right people to have money also carry a sense of accountability. They know that one day they will give an account of how they used the resources entrusted to them. This accountability keeps them from waste and misuse because they understand that money is not theirs to squander but theirs to manage. Greed creates the illusion of ownership, but alignment creates the awareness of stewardship. Accountability shapes decisions, ensuring that money is spent, invested, and given in ways that honor both God and humanity. Another trait of the right people is vision. Without vision, resources are wasted, but with vision, resources are multiplied. A greedy man may consume wealth on himself, but a man of vision multiplies wealth for the sake of others. Visionaries see opportunities where others see obstacles, and they use resources to build systems and structures that outlast them. Their money works beyond the present moment. It shapes the future. Greed is short-sighted, but vision is generational. The right people to have money think not only of themselves, but of children yet unborn, of communities yet unreached, of possibilities yet unrealized. The right people are also people of integrity. Greed often leads to compromise, cutting corners, and exploiting others for gain. But integrity guards the heart from such corruption. Integrity ensures that wealth is not built on the suffering of others, that profit is not prioritized above justice, and that abundance is not pursued at the cost of conscience. When money rests in the hands of people with integrity, it becomes a blessing because their dealings inspire trust and create stability. Such people do not just possess wealth, they command respect, and their influence is marked by honor. Ultimately, the right people to have money are those who understand that their resources are not the end but the means to a higher end. They are not ruled by greed, because greed turns wealth into chains, but alignment with purpose turns wealth into wings. They do not see themselves as owners but as vessels, channels through which abundance flows to accomplish something far greater than themselves. They understand that wealth without a purified heart is a disaster waiting to happen, but wealth with a purified heart is a blessing waiting to be revealed. These are the ones who can be trusted to handle resources in ways that uplift rather than oppress, build rather than destroy, and leave behind a legacy of good rather than a trail of regret.